Welcome back to American Ground Radio. I'm Stephen Paul with Louis R. Avalone. This is our 4th of July special coming up this weekend. What makes America great? We're doing that on radio stations across the country. And all week long, we are bringing you some of the best interviews we've done over the last 5 years of this special.
And you know what we're figuring out after 5 years, and it's very consistent, that what makes this country great in terms of being wonderful, notable, remarkable, is its people and their stories. And that's...
You've got so many people in this country, and all of them have a great story, if they'll tap into it, about what America has done for them, what America has meant to them.
You know, our next guest, you know, he's been called every name in the book.
True.
That he's betrayed his black community for his belief system.
Right.
Which he says was instilled in him by his parents.
Right. Exactly. That this is what he was raised with. We're talking about Colonel Allen West, one of the first guests we ever had on a American Ground Radio. What makes America great? 4th of July special.
America. Happy birthday to you. America.
Colonel West, thanks for joining us this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's good to be with you all.
So our question, and you're the first person who's actually served in the military that's been on our show.
Oh, cool.
And thank you for your service, by the way.
Absolutely. Thank you for the sacrifices that you've made, and thank you for helping to protect our freedom. What is it that you think makes America great?
Well, I think the thing that it makes America great is that since the day when those men at Lexington, Green, and Concord, when they answered the call of service, we continue to have young men and young women who will stand up and do as it says in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, that, you know, whom shall we send, who will go for us? And they continue to say, here am I, send me. And that is why we have, you know, Independence Day, because you had those people that stood up. And one of the great things, I'm proud to have served in the United States Army because we were there before there was a nation, before there was a flag, before there was a Constitution. There was a United States Army that was started June the 14th of 1775. So as long as we continue to produce these fine, upstanding young men and women, we will always be able to celebrate our Independence Day. We will always have this great constitutional republic we call America.
And there's something that you've kind of touched on here that I find it amazing. But since Vietnam, we have a 100% volunteer army, a volunteer military. Everybody that's there stood up, raised their hand, and said, I will go serve. It's not that they were drafted, not that they're forced to do it, but they made the decision. You made that decision when you went into the service.
Well, that's the thing. And, you know, the all-volunteer military that we have now is a reflection of those volunteers, those militiamen who were just farmers and everyday walk of life who, you know, stood on those battlefields of Lexington Green, stood there on Breed's Hill, Bunkers Hill, and continue to stand on Freedom's Rampart today. You know, I think about my own dad who went and served this country in World War II, and he stepped up to the plate because he understood what was at stake, and he fought for this country at a time when this country was not living up to all of its promises, you know, for him to provide him all the rights and privileges. But the thing that my dad taught me and told me, rather, when he asked me to be the first officer in our family, he said there was no greater honor that he could have or that I could have than to wear the uniform of this great nation. And you know,
wow,
that's why we've had multiple generations out of our family that have served this great country.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point also is our soldiers and our sailors don't take an oath to a person. They don't swear allegiance to a political party or an individual state. They promise to risk their lives to protect a document, a contract, an idea, and as you alluded to, that all men are created equal.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We take the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, which is that theme which embodies who we are as an American republic. It is our rule of law. It has nothing to do with who's sitting in the White House, although they're the commander-in-chief, but we don't take an oath to the commander-in-chief. We don't take an oath to Republican, Democrats, Independent, Green Party, whatever. Every single American knows that wherever they are, every soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, and Coast Guardsman are going to be there to safeguard their freedoms and their liberties. And that's a very special and unique relationship that you have in America is that we don't take that oath to a person. And the great thing about that oath of enlistment is that it does not have a statute of limitations. So even after you have taken that uniform off, you still, continue to do everything you can to serve and support that great Constitution. And for those of us that are still on this side of the green grass, it's very important that we tell the stories of our, fallen comrades and never let them be forgotten.
And Colonel West, you talked about your father. And so if we might go back to your childhood, when was the day that you realized America was something special, that this nation was worth defending?
Well, my dad, inculcated that in me, and my mom, who was a civilian employee for Marine headquarters in Atlanta. But probably, early on, I was 14, 15, somewhere there, and they sat me down. And my dad, who was a corporal in World War II, my older brother was a lance corporal, Marine in Vietnam, and this was about me being that first officer. And so when I put on that high school junior ROTC uniform back in 1976, that was a special moment. I'll never forget the night prior, back in the day when I was shining my brass, so that I could pass that first ever inspection I was going to have. And there was a unique pride, and it wasn't just a pride in putting on that uniform. It was a pride that I saw in my dad's face when he saw, his son shining his shoes, polishing his brass. And that was very special for me because I knew that I was taking that first step into fulfilling the challenge and the dream that my dad had for me.
You've mentioned a lot about your father and about the pride that goes across generations. When my father served in Vietnam and in Operation Iraqi Freedom, he was saying that he was willing to do those things so that his sons wouldn't have to. Is that also part of why you're doing what you're doing, is for not just the previous generation, but for the next?
Well, of course. That's the greatness of America, is that each generation tries to make it better or pass on something better to the subsequent generation. And so when I think about my dad, who was the Army corporal, the day that he stood there and pinned on second lieutenant bars on his son, and mom on the other side, it was a great day for them. And so he enabled me to be able to be in that position. And in doing so, I was a role model and example for my nephew, who is now a major in the United States Army. And now my youngest daughter has decided that she wants to be a commissioned officer and a nurse in the Army. Yeah, so my daughter would be the first female, and she would be the fifth generation. It is about making sure that there is better for future generations. And it's not so much that we want to say, we don't want you to have to do that. I think it's great to have that legacy in a family of servants, of people willing to make commitment and sacrifice to this great nation. And there's a pride that goes through that. I think it's great to be able to say that, I stood on freedom's ramparts because I want to be able to, for my family members, my daughters, my grandkids, to be able to say they knew what old man Allen West stood for. And we understand that he fought for our liberties, and he stood for our liberties even after he took off his uniform.
Colonel West, I love that. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy 4th of July, and we really appreciate you being with us here today.
Happy Independence Day, and God bless America.
Amen. Amen.